Hello. Hello.
Hi,
Can you hear
Sutapa.
me?
Yep, hello.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Great. Hey, hello viewers who all are listening to us. We are learning great and extremely sorry for that. Sincere apology. So we are kicking off our tea break and we continue with the session. So yeah, as again, I am Sutapa from ClearMe, and I am responsible for all the marketing and the communication activities which are for the go-to-market in ClearMe. This is our second edition. This is our second edition of Sustainable Meat Solution. And the idea in the first year turned out to be so good, that we wanted to have the second part. Here we are building our community. We are driving the innovations in cultivated meat sector, so that we all are always closely knitted together and we take it forward towards, building the whole concept of sustainability all together. So this year we definitely promise to be nothing short of extraordinary with the agenda cultivated meat industry in the current landscape, along with 30 years down the line, how the future will shape up, how we are going to look forward to it. Excellent to have. Warm welcome to all our panelists. Tony Hunter, one in blue shirt, I guess. Yeah. The passionate future food scientist, Tony Hunter. We have Nicholas, the CEO and founder of Alternative Protein, who dwells into data and he's making it more effective so that we realize, we analyze all the data which are impactful and effectively important for us. We have Dr. Ganesh, his research in computational gastronomy, one who is maroon t-shirt, I guess. Yeah, Ganesh, he's been phenomenal. And Ganesh, if I'm not wrong, you are also a TEDx speaker, correct?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow, amazing. So we have three great panelists who will be speaking about the cultivated meat in the current landscape and also, how the future is going to look, how it's going to shape up. So we all will be discussing in this panel. This panel discussion is all about this. So yes, moving forward to the session, I request all the panelists to introduce themselves a little more in depth, so that our viewers know who you are, what you're doing, what's your background. So Tony Hunter first, because I can see that way, I'm moving from left to right.
Thank you, Sutapa. Yeah, well, basically, I'm a food futurist. And of course, first thing people ask me when I tell them I'm a food futurist is, what's a food futurist? Well, what I do is I look at all the consumer and technology trends affecting the future of food, and I produce a roadmap to the future of food. So how we're going to get to this future, whether it's with something like cultivated meat or other alternative protein technologies, and where we're going to be in 2030, 2040, 2050, as we look 30 years ahead. My background's food science and technology. I've been general manager of two companies making things like meat toppings for Pizza Hut and hamburger patties for Burger King. So I've been in the protein meat industry for quite some time, and I've consulted for people like KFC as well on the white meat side. So protein and this cultivated meat is really something that I've been very interested in for quite a while. So thanks, Sutapa.
Tony, please do send us those pizzas, so that we also can taste it and understand, we can grab it. In India, let us have it there. Yeah, Ganesh, next.
All right. Hi, I'm Professor Ganesh Bagler from IIIT Delhi. I have been dwelling in the space of computational gastronomy, which is a new science of looking at food, recipes, flavors, nutrition, health, and finally sustainability from a data science perspective. And that is what my lab has been doing for the last 8 years. And we are known for our pioneering work in this area called computational gastronomy, which is the word which we coined ourselves. My training is interdisciplinary from that in physics, computer science to computational biology. That way, I'm an outlier in the sense that I'm not a food scientist. However, for the last 8 years, we have been dwelling in this space, thinking about food, trying to look at food from a data science perspective, building algorithms, and also working intensely on the topic of flavor and taste prediction, which very intimately attaches with the whole endeavor of trying to come up with cultivated meat. So that's how I connect with this area. And I believe there is a lot that can be done from data science and AI perspective. Thank you, Sutapa.
Wonderful. Nicholas?
Hi everyone, my name is Nicholas Dahl, and as Sutapa said, I'm the founder of Alternative Proteins Global. Alternative Proteins Global is a market research company that specializes in tracking all the trends in the alternative protein industry. So this includes, in terms of cultivated meat, all the companies, investments, investors into them, any regulatory approvals, mergers and acquisitions, supply chain, so all aspects of the industry. Basically, I build databases of what it's composed of, and then do additional data analysis and reporting on those areas.
So we have like three different people from three different segments amalgamating in one sense, and we will be talking everything about the future, the food, and how the culinary aspects are going to take place. Okay, so my first question is to Tony. Tony, I have heard like you're being really, really very passionate about food. You have been speaking about sustainability and also the protein part, how important it is, and you have been working with the corporates, in figuring out everything. So I would like to understand, how did you nourish this whole statement? Like how you have been so passionate about this cultivated meat, driving the future aspect of it, and which has the potential to be the future food basket. So why you so been passionate and what drives you?
Well, as to say, Sutapa, I mean, I've always loved technology. My background being food science and technology, I actually build my own computers. I have a couple of boxes over here waiting to be assembled into a new computer. So technology has always fascinated me. And back in about 2017 is when I saw things really start changing. And I started to see things like cultivated meat, culture meat, whatever you want to call it, come to the fore and start being, more visible. And I thought, wow, that's something I haven't seen before. I saw other technologies I hadn't seen before. I saw consumer trends happening much faster than I thought. And I really thought to myself, things are changing. And so I dug deeper. And the deeper I dug, the more fascinated I became with the whole food technology space, or new technologies coming into food. And I actually went to the first GFI conference in 2018 in San Francisco at UC Berkeley. And I came back from that convinced that things would never be the same again. And I think I was right. And so, I've been looking at all the new technologies coming into food. And of course, cultivated meat, cell-based products are front and center of what's going on. And we're going to need more protein to feed the planet by 2050. And we're going to need everything we can get. And I think cultivated meat has a huge potential to satisfy that supply of protein using less resources, but also consumers, they like meat. We need to give them something that they're going to like. And so that's why I'm sort of so passionate about what's going on and what the future is going to hold, because if we look less than 30 years out, we're looking at 9 to 10 billion people on the planet, growing middle classes. So that's going to have a dramatic effect on the future of the planet, not just the future of food.
Wonderful. I can see like Ganesh is smiling a little bit. You want to say something like why you are being so passionate and what drives you to be part of cultivated meat?
Well, when I started my work, I never thought of cultivated meat as the primary direction that I'll be thinking about working on. However, started with the taste direction and moved into health direction. Only recently we realized that to be able to feed the population of 10 billion, which we anticipate to have by 2030, we need to find ways of sustainably creating food and proteins specifically for all these 10 billion people. And that is where we moved into the direction of finding ways of computing the carbon footprint of the recipes, which will tell us about how much impact environmentally are they making. And secondly, finding ways by which we can support the cultivated meat industry. That is what I have been thinking and working on for a while now, Sutapa.
Oh, that's great. So we have been talking about the current landscape, the current scenario. So from the current to the future, the whole topic is covering. I mean, that is the paradigm we are into right now. So one thing which I want to understand, from the future perspective, like I have been meeting many people across, they come across and they get confused with the term cultivated meat. People get confused, and somewhere there is not a relation or there is not a connection which they are able to make. So again, my first question to Tony again, do you suggest something new about this terminology so that it has a better acceptance? better relativity, better connection in the future, from the consumer perspective. So instead of cultivated meat, what are the beautiful terms you would like to use, Tony?
Well, I think let's take a slightly different tack in that stuff, and let's go back to the days of ice barons. There were ice barons in the 1800s who would ship ice from the Northern Hemisphere to the Caribbean so the rich could enjoy cold drinks. And when mechanical refrigeration came along, it was called artificial ice. And the natural ice makers said that artificial ice, it melted quicker than natural ice. Now, do you now go to your refrigerator and get out some artificial ice? No, you just go and get some ice. It's frozen water made in a different way. And my feelings in the long-term future is that cultivated meat, cultured meat, whatever, will just be called meat. And we'll drop the bit off the front, and that's what it'll be called. I mean, chemistry used to be called synthetic chemistry. To manufacture things like nitrates and things like that was synthetic chemistry. Now it's just chemistry. And I'm not sure that we can come up with one magic silver bullet name for the product, which is going to speak to everybody in every country, in every culture, because these things mean different things in different cultures. And that may lead to some confusion from a global perspective, but people buy their products in their own country. And I firmly believe what fits in that country is what it should be called from a consumer point of view. If we want to call it from a scientific point of view, cultured, cultivated, cell-based, not lab-based. I mean, your yogurt is lab-based, if you like, because it starts in an ingredients lab somewhere, then gets made in a factory. So the term lab-based really is just a misnomer used by those who really don't like the whole thing process whatsoever. So I think really it's got to be looked at from a country and culture point of view, what fits with that particular geographic point.
Great point, from cultural aspect and the culinary aspect, how this can be married together. Because in India, if we see, we will call it, karma meat, because we are not killing it out. It's a good karma, what we are building it. So it is culturally very effective for us. So from that aspect, yes, from cultural aspect, country-wise, the terminology can change, and better the awareness, more the acceptance. But yeah, I'm sure lab grown is something we should be releasing out more, not be talking, because everything is created in the lab. Ganesh, you want to add something because you are in the culinary, in the gastronomical part. So any new terminology you want to introduce for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I have been compiling terminologies which are used, and I understand why someone like Tony has observations, but I have looked at terms and they are like cultivated meat, synthetic meat, artificial meat. Someone would like to call it real meat, as Tony said. With time, like it happened with ice, people might end up calling it just meat itself. Lab-based meat, karma meat, you just said it, right? Personally speaking, I don't have any attachment. And as Tony rightly said, the terminology should be one from the science perspective about what is technically correct. Lab-based meat is obviously a misnomer. And secondly, it should be pitched from the perspective of the consumers. And in a Eastern cultures, the way one looks at meat and connotations which are attached with it could be very different from typical Western cultures, although such binary division is not the way the world can be divided into. Therefore, we should come up with terminology. I completely agree with what Tony is saying. That's completely dependent on the consumers.
I agree. Nicholas, you what is the market there? How people are accepting in Australia?
So in Australia, to the best of my knowledge, so there's been a couple dozen studies around the world looking at consumer acceptance of cultivated meat and that sort of thing and how they want it labeled. And Australia is a big mix in the sense that we've got some of the companies that have raised the most money, such as Dahl in the industry here, and they're currently applying for regulatory approval. But we also have one of the highest meat consumption in the world, one of the biggest animal agriculture industries. So it's definitely a mixed bag at the moment. Yeah, we'll see in the future how it plays out.
All right, point taken, point taken. Okay, so now my next question is, again, please stay back, Nicholas, it's for you. So you have been working on the data and the reports on alternative proteins or the cultivated meat, precisely what we're talking about. Can you share what have been the trends or the three best patterns that has been observed recently and which has the potential to shape up in future?
Yeah, so by far the biggest trend and what's most talked about right now is trends to investment. So the actual investment in the cultivated meat industry has dropped quite a lot. It's actually, when you look at half-yearly intervals from 2022 to 2023, it's actually halved investment value. So all of 2022, we had about $870 million invested in the industry. And the first half of 2023, this had dropped to 180 million. So definitely it has been, not just in cultivated meat, by the way, this is across all of alternative proteins and really all categories of venture capital investment right now. So that's been a big trend, and that will likely drive other trends, such as companies perhaps, merging with each other or getting acquired, or other sort of collaborations to keep going if they're short on runway and that sort of thing. The second trend is, despite those investment headwinds, there's still a lot of companies starting up. So there's still a growth in the overall number of companies. So as of today, there's about 250 companies worldwide in the cultivated meat industry, between the cultivated meat companies themselves, those looking at seafood, and then those other companies in the supply chain producing the cell lines, cell media, scaffolding, all of that. And the third trend would likely be the reduction in cost across cultivated meat products. So again, this is hard to quantify because a lot of the estimates are from studies or LCAs such as Good Food Institute. They did a techno-economic analysis in 2023, and they quoted a range of different cost options, the lowest being that it will cost $6 a kilo to produce in the future. And I've read many articles from companies claiming to be below $100 a kilo in cost, which is much less than I think when it first started in 2013, the first burger being $200,000, $300,000 a kilo. So, or just for the burger, sorry, not per kilo. So that's been a big trend. However, it's hard to tell what percent of that product is actually cultivated meat and how much is plant-based or other materials. So those are three big trends. So the decline in investment, but still increase in companies and decrease in production cost over time.
Wonderful. So if I have to precisely conclude the top 3 pointers from what you have spoken, one is being definitely the investment part, the investor and the investment, which has gone high and this has gone a little low. So there's a crest and trough which is happening. And also from the cost competitiveness, which you are speaking, because ultimately these are the certain parameters which will decide the future. And the third part again being the sustainability aspect, because they all are interrelated again, health, sustainability and taste. So these are the going top trends what you are sharing with us. Okay, now coming back to the trends, as we have discussed, and we have a panelist who is into absolutely culinary part. So Dr. Ganesh, what's your take on the taste and health here, and how AI will help in shaping it?
I would rather touch mainly on the flavor and aroma part of it. When it comes to meat, I presume that one of the most complex things, other than the matrix itself, the flesh matrix itself, is that of the rich taste and aroma that every type of meat is supposed to have, whether it is beef, goat, or sheep meat that we enjoy and experience when we consume it. Therefore, that is where I see there is a lot of scope from the computational perspective, from a data-driven perspective, wherein AI-driven techniques can be used for predicting the taste at a molecular level, such that a concoction of molecules can be used to recreate the rich aroma and the taste that a real meat tends to have. Now, that's a very, very challenging problem, may I say so, given the fact that the meat undergoes cooking also. So we need to account for the fact that these molecules have to survive and sustain the cooking process that they are applied upon. But at the end of the day, the final dish that is prepared must have a similar aroma as that of the real meat. I think that's one of the most interesting challenges that AI data science can help us solve. And one way we are trying to do is creating a database of flavor molecules present in naturally found, for example, meat ingredients. Flavor DB, database of flavor molecules that we published, has one of them. And secondly, we are building algorithms. Given a molecule, a chemical, natural or synthetic, doesn't matter. Can you predict what kind of a rich aroma and taste it would have is another direction that we are looking at. And we are obviously focusing specifically on a different type of meats that can be used, for which we can make these predictions and thereby driving this field forward. Sutapa.
Are you suggesting is like if I have a cultivated meat and a normal meat in the shelf, in the rack, and cultivated meat which has the highest percent of aroma, which has been infused, will sell more through AI in the future?
In principle, that is the direction we are looking towards.
Oh, wonderful. Then everything will be at par, like people will not be able to make it out unless and until the taste. And what about the taste? How do we go at par with that then?
Both.
Can I
When I
just
say flavor,
say-
sorry, please, Tony, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, just
Yeah,
say, I think that's the thing, Sutapa. Everybody looks at hamburgers or Wagyu meat or anything as the best flavor. They are the best flavor we know today. There is no Einstein's law of hamburgers or Wagyu that says that is as good as anything can ever taste. As Ganesh said, if we can isolate the aroma compounds, there's nothing to say that cultivated meat cannot taste better than traditional animal meat. There is no Einstein's law of flavor that says it will never be better than a Wagyu.
There is no optimal flavor. I mean, there is nothing to say that what we naturally consume has gotten quote unquote an optimal flavor. It can be far better, far more likable than what we consume from the natural meat. That's what Tony is saying.
Okay, you are putting that umami thing. Yeah, Tony, please continue.
Sorry, and I think the other thing is, one thing we know when we buy a steak, you're never, unless you're buying the top Wagyu, absolutely sure what the aroma and what the texture is going to be. The big advantage of cultivated meat should be every time I buy that product, I know exactly what I'm getting. I know how tender it's going to be. I know exactly how it's going to taste. I know exactly how it's going to smell, and I get absolute consistency. And that is one of the big advantages of cultivated meat, should be that the consumer will never have to doubt the quality of the product they're getting. I mean, the meat industry itself has tried for decades, I'm talking 30, 40, 50 years, to try and give a way of ensuring the quality and the tenderness and the taste of meat cuts. In Australia, we've had various schemes, this scheme, that scheme, the other scheme, that's supposed to guarantee when you buy your steak, it will taste like this and the texture will be that. It hasn't worked because animal meat is inherently so variable. Climate, feed, length of feed, slaughter, all these other things that make a difference to the end product. Cultivated meat should be able to narrow that variability from here to here. And I think combined with that aroma and flavor consistency should be a clear point of difference that consumers could be prepared to actually pay a premium for, not just say they will and then not spend the money.
All right. So when you say aroma, it means like after cooking, right? Not before, because when we buy it, flesh has a different smell, chicken has a different smell. So cultivated meat, like when we have seen, there was no smell as such, So aroma is something which will be infused once they start cooking, and then they can have the platter ready.
Post-preparation.
Post preparation, yeah. So now coming back to this infusion of aroma, the texture, the flavor. So don't you think this will put up a little more cost to the current scenario, and this will impact the competitiveness or the cost effectiveness in buying the product?
I'll jump in on that one. I think the thing is, what we're finding with a lot of animal agriculture is one of the things that they make a claim to is that they upcycle human inedible food. And I say there is no such thing as human inedible food. There's only food that hasn't yet been processed to make it edible for humans. And things like brewer's spent grain and distiller's spent grain, traditionally people tried to get rid of it. Even if they have, as long as it doesn't cost anything, they'll give it away to feed animals. Now we're seeing new food technologies come along and say, no, wait a minute, we can use that brewer's spent grain. We can use that as a company called Infinite Roots, using that to grow mushrooms, to grow products, using brewer's spent grain with the Bitburger Brewery Group. There are other people who are processing that into bioactives, high protein products, and this sort of thing. And I know someone here in Australia went to a meeting and animal agriculture, some cattle farmers there, they were appalled that he was stealing their free feed for their animals. So I think animal meat has only one trajectory in costs, and that's up. And I think that looking at where we are with cultivated meat, as been mentioned, is it $100 a kilogram, as Nicholas said, or is it whatever it is? But its trajectory is still down. And I think particularly whole muscle cuts, given that I believe animal agriculture meat's only going to continue to go up, and we've got the other one coming down. Whether they will cross or whether they level off, I don't know. But I think that that's what I see coming.
Okay, that's a point. I mean, like we are taking, and we are also running out of time, people are indicating. So my last question to you, like, what are the, what will be your take or counterintuitive, half crazy predictions over 5 years down the line? Yes, definitely one is yes to cultivated meat, but apart from that, what could be the other predictions you anticipate?
Yeah, well, I think back to what Ganesh and Tony were talking about in terms of the product like attributes and how you can basically make it taste exactly how you want, whatever nutrients it is. I think the same applies to health. And I'd expect there'd be a range of different cultivated meat products where some of them just replicate, let's say, fast food, right? And it might not be any healthier, but it's what people like and taste. And then there'll be other ones which, maybe have more protein or more iron or less salt, that sort of thing, like whatever it is that they're including. So a large range of products. I don't know exactly when we'll get to try that, but I'd expect that will definitely happen.
Wonderful, because Clearmeat is definitely doing it. We can customize our product. What about like Tony and Ganesh? Like, I mean, your final statement to this, the crazy predictions, any 3 pointers you would like to suggest, the prediction of the trend which is going to happen?
If I may quickly take it.
Yes.
Given the kind of companies that are opening, which are trying to produce cultivated meat, let's call it so right now, I believe the diversity of the technologies that are being implemented and different approaches that have been taken from cell biology, molecular biology, flavor chemistry, etc., we would have product coming up sooner than later is my quick prediction. And if you wish to call it crazy or not, but a prediction for sure, that's one. Second, acceptability. Now, that is where I think the challenge lies. How much, to what extent would consumers be accepting a product that is available, as it happened in the case of Impossible Burger or other thing, is a very, very challenging thing to predict. And I only think somebody like Tony, who is a futurist, should be able to take a call on that. I'm not the right person to be giving a judgment on that. But my suspicion, my quick judgment is that it would take longer to get the people's acceptance, consumers' acceptance vis-a-vis what we imagine it would be. Just creating a product which is similar or maybe quote unquote better in a lab setting in terms of its flavor, fragrance, aroma is not going to be just enough. There is something more to it. Consciousness in terms of environmental consciousness, price sensitivity, and of course the taste part of it. All of these three together are going to play a role in its mass acceptance, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, Tony.
A couple of things to follow on from what Ganesh is saying, acceptability. If you look at the generations, Gen Z, about 78% of them are comfortable with technology being used to make their food, 67 for Gen Y, and then Boomers and Gen X are 58%. And the big generation to watch out for, Generation Alpha. By the end of this year, there will be 2 billion Gen Alphas on the planet, all the way from India down through the Asian subcontinent, China, across to Indonesia and the Philippines. So looking to the long-term future, it's their values and ideas and things like sustainability which will drive the future of food, whether it's cultivated meat or anything else. And if they see the sustainability advantages, anyone I've spoken to who has a Gen Alpha child says whatever the Gen Alpha child wants or thinks, the family goes with. If they say that cultivated meat's the thing to go for because mummy and daddy, it's far more sustainable, they didn't kill any nice little lambs or baby animals, and that's what we should eat, then the family is going to at least try it. There's no doubt in my mind of that, particularly in the next 5 years, as the Gen Alphas then hit by 2030. The oldest of them will be 20 and the youngest will be 6, and at 6 years old with their smartphones they're going to be telling people what to do. And lastly, I just think we're going to see a lot of consolidation in the industry over the next 5 years. I think we've got multiple technology streams. We'll see some of those fall by the wayside. We'll see others come to the fore, but I see quite a lot of consolidation going on. The good companies will continue to get funded. Those that maybe don't have as good a point of difference won't.
Yes, I agree to what you have said, and definitely the pointers are yes to the cultivated meat, yes to the future basket. So whosoever it is, Gen Z, Gen X, Millennials, Gen L, all are going to accept it. That is what we are going to take it out from and working towards the sustainability and marching towards it. Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for joining this beautiful session. Thank you. Thanks all for this insightful session again. Thank you. Welcome. We will see you next year. And meanwhile, I will get connected with you again for other details. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good day.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.